When Officer Riley Barnes answers a late-night noise complaint at the Thompson home, she expects nothing more than a routine visit. But the moment Riley steps through that front door and sees a frightened teenage boy lurking in the hall, silently mouthing "Help us," a chill runs through her. Something is wrong here, deeply wrong. Before we dive into the full story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you believe in the power of justice, like this video and subscribe for more stories that shine a light on hidden truths. She stands in the foyer of the Thompson home, scanning the high ceilings and the polished floors. It's late, and she can still hear the echo of whatever commotion prompted the call. Gail Thompson herself appears at the top of a curved staircase, wearing a friendly, if slightly flustered, smile. "Officer," Gail says, "I'm so sorry if we disturb the neighbors. Just a few of the older kids horsing around." Her tone is calm and assuring, almost disarming, but Riley can't help thinking about that terrified boy's face, those lips forming a desperate plea without a sound. "Mind if I check around?" Riley asks. Gail nods, leading her through the hallway, pointing out the living room and the kids' bedrooms. Everything about the place seems neat, even cozy, yet there's a stiffness to the children's interactions with Gail, as though each child has been schooled in precisely how to behave when a visitor arrives. Riley notes the unnatural quiet that falls whenever Gail enters a room. She tries to locate the boy she saw in the hallway, but he's nowhere to be found, and every other kid she attempts to speak to gives a polite but brief response. Moments later, Gail is escorting Riley to the door, thanking her for coming by. Despite not finding anything blatantly amiss, Riley's instincts prickle all the way back to her cruiser. She gives a parting glance at the shadowed windows, certain she's leaving behind something far more ominous than rambunctious teens. She drives off, radio silent, replaying the boy's terrified expression in her mind. A single phrase loops in her head, "Help us," an unspoken cry that might vanish into the night if she doesn't act. She knows how easily red flags can be overlooked in institutions, especially when those in charge hold near-angelic reputations. Instead of heading straight back to the station, she parks on a side street for a moment, tapping her fingers against the steering wheel. Her own history in foster care has taught her that appearances can be deceptive. She decides, right then, to dig deeper into the Thompson home's records the next day. If there's nothing to find, at least she can put her mind at ease. But if there's something to that boy's silent plea, she owes it to him, and every child in that house, to uncover the truth. Riley grew up in the foster system herself, and she's all too aware of the mistakes social services can make when the wrong people are trusted. She taps the steering wheel with restless fingers, feeling the old memories resurface, placements that lasted only a few months, well-meaning but overworked social workers who rarely had time to check in, and houses that outwardly seemed welcoming only to harbor neglect behind closed curtains. She never wants to see any child go through what she did. Yet protocol is protocol, and she can't just barge back into the Thompson home accusing anyone of wrongdoing based on a fleeting impression. She starts the engine, telling herself she'll keep an eye on this place. After all, she can file a simple inquiry with the relevant department and see if there are any red flags in the system's records. Then, if that yields something, anything, she'll come back with firmer ground beneath her feet. 2 days later, she's sifting through every public document she can find: city inspection forms, charitable donations, licensing records, staff rosters, everything that might cast a ray of light on the Thompson home. To her frustration, it's all sparkling. Gail Thompson, the home's founder, is practically a saint in the eyes of the local community. Photographs show her smiling at fundraising events with city council members and hugging small children who appear equally happy. Testimonials from parents who adopted from the home praise her for going above and beyond to place kids in the best possible families. A few lines in an old newspaper article mention her receiving an award for exemplary service to disadvantaged youth. There isn't a single complaint on record, not even for something benign like noise violations or minor staff misconduct. It's spotless, too spotless as far as Riley is concerned. That same day, While sitting in a cramped back office at the station, she tries to push deeper than the standard public records. She requests data from the Department of Children's Services to see if there's any hidden pattern of runaways, unexplained transfers, or higher than usual turnover of children. Unfortunately, she doesn't have immediate clearance for some of the documents. She sees a bunch of references to the Thompson home in the county's child welfare database, but all the files are locked behind additional confidentiality protocols. It's not unusual, given privacy laws, but it makes her job that much harder. She tells herself not to obsess. After all, there's nothing official to suggest wrongdoing. Yet she can't shake the memory of that boy, his eyes full of a fear that kids only show when adults have hurt them or are about to. She manages to get a partial data readout from the county system, which includes the number of children placed at the home over the last 5 years. According to this data, children stay at the Thompson home for an average of 3 to 4 months before either returning to family or being transferred to long-term foster placements or adoptive homes. It doesn't sound abnormal. Still, her instincts prickle when she sees some lines of data that appear truncated. The system claims these children's transferred to other foster facilities, but the receiving facilities aren't named. Many times, there's a to be determined or awaiting update note. She wonders if that's just standard lag in the system or if something else is going on. 3 nights later, well past midnight, she parks her cruiser on a street 2 blocks from the Thompson home. Dressed in civilian clothes, she walks quietly along the sidewalk, just to see if anything stands out. The entire street is dark and silent. She can see the faint glow of a television set flickering in one of the home's windows, but no unusual activity. After 15 minutes standing there, she starts to feel a bit foolish. She's about to turn around when a figure appears at the edge of the property, creeping through the yard. She squints, trying to make out details. The shape is small, maybe a child, maybe a short teenager. A beam of a street light reveals the person's face for just a second. It's the same boy from that night. JJ, she thinks that's what Gail had called him in passing. He's looking around as if expecting to be followed. Riley debates calling out, but something in his anxious posture suggests he might bolt. She stands still instead, letting him approach. He notices her anyway. They stare at each other for a moment under the faint orange glow of the street lamp. Then, as if making a decision, he shuffles closer, hands trembling at his sides. "Why are you out here so late?" Riley asks in a gentle tone, not wanting to startle him. He glances over his shoulder before responding in a hushed voice, "I'm not supposed to leave, but I needed to talk to you." She feels her pulse quicken. "You remember me from the other night?" He nods vigorously. "You saw me." I tried to say, help." "I remember," she says softly. "What's going on, JJ? You can tell me." "Please, you can't tell anyone I came to you. I'll be in so much trouble if they find out." His voice shakes with genuine fear. He looks like he hasn't slept in days, dark rings under his eyes. She takes a step closer, scanning his face. "I promise I won't say anything you don't want me to. But if something bad is happening, I need details. I can't help if I don't know." JJ exhales shakily, then extends a folded piece of paper from inside his hoodie. Riley notices the paper trembling in his grasp. She takes it carefully, flipping it open to see a list of names written in a messy scrawl. They're mostly first names, some with partial last initials, Ava G, Sean R, and so on. "These are kids," JJ whispers, "who were here at the Thompson home but then they just disappeared. Gail said they got adopted or transferred to other places. But some of them, I don't think that's what happened." Riley glances over the list, heart pounding. "How many are on here?" 10, he says. "There were 2 more, but I can't remember their names. They left so quickly. Then they never wrote back or anything. None of us ever got any goodbye or contact info. Gail told us not to ask questions." Riley rubs the back of her neck, recalling how official records sometimes list children as transferred without specifying. "Is there anything else?" JJ nods, looking around again to make sure they're alone. Sometimes at night these cars come by. Vans or black SUVs. People go inside and talk to Gail in her office. Then they take one of the younger kids out. I asked about it once, and she told me not to spread rumors or I'd end up. He stops, face pale. End up where? Riley asks gently. He doesn't finish. Instead, he points to the list. Ava. She was so scared all the time. She kept saying she heard Gail talking on the phone about money. Then Ava just disappeared. We never saw her again. Gail said she got moved to a new family. But I never believed it. Riley's stomach turns. Child trafficking? That's the horrifying possibility swirling in her mind, but it's too soon to jump to conclusions. Still, the mere suggestion fills her with a protective rage. She tries to keep her expression neutral. All right, JJ, listen, I need you to be safe. Don't do anything dangerous. Go back inside and act normal. I'll look into this, and if something is going on, I'll get you and the others out. Promise me, he pleads, voice cracking. They're taking kids. I'm sure of it. Gail smiles a lot, but it's not real. Sometimes she scares me. I promise, she says, and she means it. I'll figure this out. He nods, tears glistening in his eyes, then hurries back across the yard and slips inside through a side door. Riley stands there, gripping the paper with the names, feeling a swirl of anger, dread, and a fierce determination. She knows how the system can fail kids. But if any child is in danger, she can't look away. The next morning, she contacts Simone Delaney, a social worker assigned to the Thompson home, to set up a meeting. When Simone answers the phone, Riley tries to keep her tone professional. Simone, I'm Officer Barnes. I'd like to talk about the Thompson home and some anomalies I found in the foster records. Simone hesitates. I've inspected that place multiple times. Gail Thompson runs one of the cleanest operations I've ever seen. Why the sudden interest? Riley decides not to mention JJ yet. I have some concerns based on my visit a few nights ago. I was hoping we could compare notes. An hour later, they meet in a small coffee shop not far from the station. Simone arrives in a neat blouse and slacks, looking every bit the seasoned professional. She's carrying a manila folder with her. They sit at a corner table away from any eavesdroppers. Simone sets down her coffee. So, what exactly is going on? Riley slides over a copy of the partial county data she managed to print. I've noticed a pattern of incomplete transfer records. Some kids appear in the system as placed at the Thompson home, but there's no follow-up on where they went. Not always, but enough times to raise my eyebrows. Simone flips through the pages, brow furrowing. It could be administrative delays, lost paperwork, or legitimate privacy reasons. It's not unheard of for the system to be slow. Sure, Riley acknowledges, but the numbers are higher than average compared to other foster facilities in the same time frame. And I had an interaction with one of the kids who seemed really distressed. Simone lifts her gaze. You're not the first officer to visit there. Officers come by for wellness checks from time to time, but no one's ever reported anything suspicious. Riley offers a tight smile. I know. It's got a stellar reputation. That's part of why I'm concerned. It's almost too good. I found 0 complaints, 0 incidents. Not even a petty violation. In my experience, places that deal with traumatized kids are rarely that squeaky clean. Simone exhales and drums her fingers on the folder. I'll be honest. Gail Thompson has an excellent track record. The kids I've met there generally seemed okay, well-fed, attending school, no obvious bruises or injuries. But now that you mention it, some of her monthly reports did come in suspiciously polished. I have a checklist I use. Emotional state of the kids, their social interactions, upkeep of the facility. All of it always scored near perfect. That's rare. Riley nods. Exactly. And that's why I'm digging deeper. If there's nothing wrong, then great, but if there is, she takes a careful breath. One boy said some of the younger kids vanish in the middle of the night. The official story is they're placed in new homes, but there's no real paperwork. Simone's expression shifts to something more troubled. That's a serious accusation. I can request an unscheduled inspection. But if I do that and it's a bust, Gail's going to be furious about the disruption. Riley understands the delicacy. Foster homes rely on trust and good relationships with state agencies. A false alarm can damage that trust. Still, she can't let it go. We'll handle it carefully. But I think we need to see for ourselves what's really going on. Maybe it's nothing, but we can't ignore the possibility of abuse or worse. Simone leans back, silent for a moment, then finally nods. Fine. I'll set something up. But it needs to be by the book. We need a valid reason for a surprise inspection besides your gut feeling. Understood, Riley says, thankful for the small victory. They part ways, each carrying a heaviness that the system they serve might be corrupted from within. Over the next few days, Riley keeps working her normal shifts, but her mind drifts to JJ. She wonders if he's okay, if he's noticed any repercussions for slipping out to meet her. She worries that the more time passes, the more likely it is that some child at the Thompson home might be put in harm's way. Then, on a quiet afternoon, a phone call comes in at the station. The dispatcher calls Riley over. Someone's asking for you by name, the dispatcher says. Says it's urgent? Riley picks up the phone, half expecting JJ or Simone. But the voice on the other end is a panicked whisper she doesn't recognize immediately. Officer Barnes? Please, I need your help. She closes her eyes, focusing. Who is this? This is Ava's friend. She was at the Thompson home with me. My name is Carla. I managed to run away last night. I'm hiding, but I don't know where to go. I'm only 15. They're looking for me, I'm sure they are. Riley's pulse races. She knows the name Ava from JJ's list. Carla, where are you? Are you safe right now? I'm in a bus station, but I don't have any money. I only had enough to get out of the neighborhood. I saw a group of men outside that place 2 nights ago. They were taking photos of us. I heard Gail say something about a shipment. I got scared. I climbed out a window. Stay on the line, Riley urges. Tell me exactly which bus station. I'll come get you. We'll figure this out. Carla describes her surroundings, and Riley recognizes a station across town. She quickly grabs her jacket and keys, notifying her sergeant that she's heading out to respond to a potential runaway in danger. 10 minutes later, she's at the station, scanning the crowd. Sitting by a vending machine is a thin girl with tear-streaked cheeks, clutching a ratty backpack. Riley approaches slowly, holding up her badge so Carla won't panic. Carla immediately starts sobbing when she sees Riley. I don't know what to do. Ava, she disappeared weeks ago. They said she got adopted, but she didn't even say goodbye. Then last week, Gail kept talking to these men who looked way too old to be adopting kids. She told us to go to bed and not ask questions. Riley nods, gently guiding Carla to her cruiser. She lets the girl warm up inside, offering water from a bottle in the center console. You did the right thing calling me. We'll sort this out. Carla glances around, wide-eyed. Are you going to take me back? Riley hesitates. Not if you're in danger there. I'll have to place you somewhere safe. Let me call Child Protective Services or Simone Delaney to see about an emergency placement. But first, I want to hear everything you have to say. Between sniffles, Carla describes nights when black vans parked near the rear entrance, how Gail would greet shady visitors with forced smiles. Carla says Gail always insisted the younger kids go to bed before these visits, telling them it was just routine maintenance checks or donors dropping off supplies. But Carla claims she saw, more than once, children leaving with these strangers, tears in their eyes, no goodbyes or farewells. The next day, Gail would tell everyone the child was adopted or transferred. No one ever questioned it openly, but the air in the home felt sinister, Carla says. The older kids learned to keep their heads down. She mentions that JJ has been fearless in trying to find out the truth, but many others are too scared to even talk about it. Riley can hardly believe the scope of what she's hearing. She tries to remain professional, even as anger wells up within her. Child trafficking is not something she's had to deal with directly in her career, but she knows the horror stories. The idea that a respected foster home might be involved is stomach-churning. She places a call to Simone Delaney right then. "I have Carla here," she says once Simone picks up. She's a runaway from the Thompson home. According to her statement, there's strong evidence that children are being trafficked. Simone sounds alarmed. "I'll get an emergency protective placement set up for her. We can't send her back there. That means we have grounds to do a thorough inspection. If Carla's story holds, we might be dealing with serious criminal activity." Riley hangs up and turns to Carla. "I'm taking you to a temporary safe location. Someone will meet us there to look after you. You're not going back to the Thompson home." Carla's shoulders sag in relief, and she finally stops shaking. That evening, Riley and Simone meet once more, this time in a secure office at the Child Protective Services building. Simone has requested an expedited hearing to obtain the authority for an unannounced inspection. The judge on duty hears about Carla's statement and the suspicious circumstances. Though the evidence is largely testimonial at this point, it's enough to warrant an immediate check, especially given the potential for imminent harm to the children. They plan the inspection for the following day, aiming to arrive without warning. In the meantime, Riley calls in a favor from a tech-savvy colleague at the station to pull any phone records linking the Thompson home to known traffickers or suspicious numbers. She also tries to see if the vehicles described by Carla, vans, SUVs, have been spotted on local surveillance cameras near the home. As dawn breaks, Riley is practically jittery with anticipation and concern. She meets Simone in the parking lot outside the Thompson home, accompanied by 2 more social workers and a plainclothes detective. They have a stack of official papers granting them the right to conduct a thorough, top-to-bottom inspection. Riley checks her holster out of habit. She doesn't expect a violent confrontation, but something about Gail's potential connections to criminals puts her on edge. They ring the doorbell. After an uncomfortably long pause, Gail Thompson opens it, wearing a pastel robe and looking surprised. The scent of coffee lingers in the background, and the morning sun streams through the hallway behind her. Her lips curl into a confused smile. "What's this about?" Simone steps forward, holding up the paperwork. "We're here for an unscheduled evaluation of the facility and welfare of the children." Gail's eyes flick from Simone to Riley, then to the detective. The confusion on her face deepens into wariness. "You could have called first. The kids are still sleeping." "That's the point of an unannounced visit," Simone replies, stepping inside. "We have the legal authority to do so." Riley observes Gail carefully. Beneath her attempt at a pleasant smile, there is a flicker of something else, anger, maybe even fear. Gail leads them into the living room, which is immaculate. It looks more like a staged set than a home where over a dozen kids presumably live. Not a toy out of place, not a speck of dust on the furniture. Simone and the other social workers begin methodically checking the bedrooms, talking to whichever kids are awake. The detective wanders the halls, taking notes. Meanwhile, Gail follows them around, arms folded. She explains that some children are still asleep, but the staff members are free to wake them if they must. She keeps insisting that everything is fine, that the real disruption to the children's well-being is this intrusive inspection. Riley notices JJ peeking out from the second-floor landing, eyes wide. She gives him a small nod of reassurance, but they don't speak openly. She can sense his terror at being caught cooperating with her. Then, from the corner of her eye, she spots a door near the kitchen that's locked with a keypad. Gail intercepts her gaze. "That's my personal office. I'd appreciate some privacy," Gail says, voice cool. Riley adjusts her stance. "We have permission to inspect all parts of the home where children might have access, including offices. If you have personal items you need to secure, you can do so, but we will need to see inside." Gail's jaw tightens. She reluctantly types the code, and the door clicks open. The office itself is neat, but there's a distinct, pungent odor. A side door in the office presumably leads to the basement. Gail quickly stands in front of it. The basement is for storage. It's dark and cluttered. No children go down there. The detective steps forward. We'll need to see it. Gail sighs dramatically, fishing out another key from her robe pocket. She unlocks the basement door, flipping on a light switch that reveals a set of concrete steps. The group descends, and the smell intensifies, damp and musty, with a faint chemical tang. Shelves line the walls, holding boxes labeled with dates that presumably indicate children's files or donation records. It all looks innocuous at first glance, but Riley's instincts tell her to look closer. She notices a locked steel cabinet in the far corner. What's in there? Gail pretends to laugh. Old tax documents. Really, this is too much. Can't we do this another time? You're frightening the kids. Simone gives Gail a thin smile. Please open it. After some more complaining, Gail unlocks the cabinet. Inside, they find thick folders, each labeled with a child's name. Some of the names match the partial list JJ gave Riley. She flips through the top folder and sees references to medical histories, birth dates, photos, but also numbers that look suspiciously like transaction amounts. Simone's eyes grow wide as she scans the data. Gail's face pales. It's just budgeting for care, Gail mutters. Riley spots another folder with Ava's name. She opens it and sees typed notes about a buyer's interest, referencing a date about a month ago. Her heart nearly slams into her throat. Budgeting for care, huh? Gail attempts to snatch the folder out of Riley's hands. The detective intervenes. Simone steps away to call for backup. Up above, they hear commotion. Some staff members are trying to intervene, telling the social workers they have no right to be there. It's chaos now. Gail hisses under her breath, "You have no idea what you're doing. Those kids were better off with families who could actually pay for their needs." Riley tries to keep her composure. This is human trafficking. Gail glares at her, a twisted sneer. It's placing unwanted children into homes that can provide for them. Call it what you want. Riley's fury rises. You're selling them like property. Gail points an accusing finger at her. You think you know anything about the system? You, of all people, should understand how broken it is. I cut through the red tape. Some of these kids would never get adopted otherwise. Who are these buyers? The detective demands. Gail remains silent, lips pressed into a firm line. But the evidence is there, plain as day in those folders. More cops arrive at the top of the basement stairs, having been called by Simone. Gail tries to block them, but she's swiftly moved aside. They search further and find a locked trunk containing small personal items, stuffed animals, children's shoes, and old photos. Several officers begin photographing everything for evidence. JJ appears at the top of the stairs, wide-eyed at the scene. Riley gestures for him to stay back, not wanting him to see anything that might traumatize him further. But the look on his face tells her he's just as determined to see justice done. By evening, Gail Thompson and 2 of her staff members are in handcuffs, escorted out of the home. The children are placed in emergency care arrangements. Carla is brought in as well, confirming details about how suspicious visitors arrived late at night and how some kids never returned. Riley and Simone both give statements, describing the locked cabinets, the transaction records, the horrifying trunk of children's belongings that presumably never made it to their rightful owners. In the weeks that follow, an extensive investigation unravels the scope of Gail Thompson's activities. It turns out she's been working with a network of traffickers who operate under the guise of private adoption brokers. The Thompson home, with its sterling reputation, served as a cover to funnel kids to these clients who paid handsomely. Some might have genuinely wanted children to adopt, but many had darker intentions. The financial ledgers reveal an extensive list of buyers, some local, some out of state. Riley meets with the district attorney to provide everything she has. JJ, Carla, and a handful of other brave children offer testimony as well. The story hits local news outlets, and the community is shocked that such a revered facility was actually a front for child exploitation. Donations that once flowed to the Thompson home dry up overnight. City officials who took photos with Gail distanced themselves, claiming they had no idea. Despite the initial outrage, the legal process is grueling. Gail Thompson hires an expensive defense lawyer, arguing that she merely collected higher adoption fees for the sake of the children's welfare. The lawyer tries to spin the narrative that children transferred out quickly because they found stable homes. But the prosecution, armed with the hidden ledgers and the children's testimonies, paints a far darker picture. Evidence of forged documents used to conceal the real identities of the adopters is damning. The judge sets a trial date, and local reporters eagerly cover every development. During the pretrial hearings, JJ is placed in a secure foster arrangement, but he still lives in fear that someone from the trafficking ring might come after him. He calls Riley one night, voice trembling. What if there are more people involved? Gail knew a lot of men with those vans. Maybe they won't stop. Riley reassures him as best she can, telling him the ring is being dismantled piece by piece. The truth is she's only partially confident. She's heard from detectives in other districts that there could be others in the chain who haven't been arrested yet. But she tells JJ to stay strong, promising she and Simone will keep fighting until they've brought everyone involved to justice. At last, the trial begins in a crowded courthouse. Riley sits near the front, in uniform, prepared to testify. Gail Thompson appears in a tailored suit, her once maternal demeanor replaced by a cold, stoic mask. As the prosecution lays out the charges, human trafficking, child endangerment, fraud, the tension is palpable. One by one, the state calls its witnesses. Social workers describe their shock at discovering the sub-basement records. Detectives present photographic evidence of locked trunks, hidden compartments, and financial ledgers. Forensic experts detail how the documents were systematically altered to show bogus transfer locations. Riley takes the stand on the second day, recounting the noise complaint, her initial suspicions, and JJ's clandestine meeting where he handed her the list of missing kids. She locks eyes with Gail only once during her testimony. Gail stares back with an expression that might be equal parts hatred and desperation. When asked by the prosecutor why she continued digging despite no official complaints on file, Riley answers plainly, "Because I was in the foster system. I know what it's like when you're terrified that no adult will believe you. If a child mouths, 'Help us,' you don't walk away." JJ testifies the following day, escorted by a child advocate. He's nervous but manages to speak clearly, describing how certain children would be pulled away in the middle of the night, never to return. He details how Gail threatened him when he started asking too many questions. He recalls the last time he saw Ava, how she was crying in the hallway, begging for someone to help her. A hush falls over the courtroom as JJ fights back tears. The defense tries to paint him as a troubled teen with an overactive imagination, but JJ's raw emotional honesty rings true to the jury. Carla also testifies, her voice cracking as she recounts her harrowing decision to run away and the fear that gripped her every time she heard a van pulling up at night. She looks at Gail with a mixture of terror and anger, describing the staff's threats that if she ever told anyone, no one would believe her. The jury seems visibly moved. The trial drags on for nearly 2 weeks, with the defense attempting various tactics to discredit the witnesses or minimize Gail's role. But the documents, phone records, and direct testimonies form an airtight case. By the time closing arguments wrap up, the prevailing sentiment in the courtroom is that Gail Thompson, once lauded as a champion for disadvantaged children, has betrayed not just those she claimed to serve but the entire community that trusted her. The jury deliberates for 2 days, returning a verdict of guilty on multiple counts, including human trafficking. Gail's lawyer requests leniency, citing her philanthropic history, but the judge is unmoved, citing the severity of her crimes. Gail Thompson receives a lengthy prison sentence, and her 2 main accomplices also face substantial penalties. The children who were taken from the home and found in the ledgers are now being tracked down by law enforcement, offering a slim hope of rescue for those still missing. It's not a perfect conclusion, There are likely more people involved who remain at large, but it's a start. After the sentencing, Riley stands outside the courthouse, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. She sees JJ standing with a social worker, looking overwhelmed. She walks over and crouches down slightly to meet his eye level. "You did it," she says, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "You were brave." He looks at her with a mix of gratitude and lingering fear. "I just didn't want anyone else to disappear like Ava." She nods. "Thanks to you, we might be able to find her, and the others too." She's not certain they'll succeed in every case, but the search is on, and that's more hope than any of these kids had before. "Listen, I'm going to check in on you, okay? Make sure you're safe and see how you're doing. You're not alone anymore." He sniffles. "I appreciate that." Riley glances toward Simone, who has tears in her eyes. The social worker steps forward. "This is a turning point," Simone says softly. "For so long, nobody questioned Gail. Now, maybe the entire foster care system will start paying closer attention to these so-called perfect records." Riley nods. She thinks back to her own childhood, the times she felt invisible, the nights she cried herself to sleep in unfamiliar rooms. If nothing else, this experience proves that listening to a child's plea can unravel even the most well-disguised web of evil. She recalls the small detail that started it all, just a boy mouthing the words, "Help us." In the following weeks, media coverage highlights the destruction of Gail Thompson's reputation, once considered untouchable. The police department issues a statement commending Riley's diligence. The city council, ashamed of their previous support, announces new oversight committees for foster homes. Tips start flooding in about other suspicious situations. Some are dead ends, but others might lead to further investigations. The city is waking up to the reality that not every philanthropic figure is genuine, and that real charity demands transparency and accountability. In the midst of it all, Riley receives a phone call from an out-of-state detective who believes some of the trafficked children have ended up hundreds of miles away. It's a bleak reminder that the fight is far from over. Riley prepares for a potential road trip, determined to chase down any lead that could reunite a missing child with safety. JJ stays in a stable foster arrangement, with Simone visiting regularly. He talks about wanting to become a social worker someday, saying that if someone like him had been in charge, maybe none of this would have happened. His newfound purpose draws admiration from those around him, a sign that even after tremendous darkness, hope can still sprout in the cracks. Late one night, weeks after the trial, Riley sits at her kitchen table, sifting through updated data about the Thompson home. It's officially shut down now, the building sealed off until further notice. She wonders what will become of it, probably sold off or repurposed. In her mind, it will always be a place of horrors disguised by a veneer of kindness. She thinks about Gail's final words in the basement, "You have no idea what you're doing. These kids were better off." Riley's anger flares at the memory. She can't fathom the mental gymnastics someone would use to justify profiting from children's misery. She's relieved that Gail can't harm anyone else, but she knows the damage is done. Some kids might never be found, and those who are will carry scars for a lifetime. Still, for every child saved, for every story brought to light, there's a sliver of redemption. Riley's phone buzzes with a text. It's from Simone, letting her know that Carla's therapy sessions are going well and that she's starting to trust adults again. That's enough to give Riley a sense of purpose. She closes the file and goes to bed, not content, but grateful that progress is being made. Tomorrow she'll follow up on more leads, more possible connections to Gail's ring. She'll do it because she promised JJ she'd keep going, and because once upon a time, someone had given her a chance to break the cycle of her own turbulent foster childhood. 2 months after the verdict, the community sponsors a small ceremony to honor the law enforcement officers, social workers, and child advocates who helped expose the trafficking operation. Riley attends reluctantly, not a fan of the spotlight. As the mayor hands her a certificate of commendation, she feels a pang of discomfort, wishing more could have been done earlier. She looks out at the crowd, sees some of the kids from the Thompson home in new foster families, sees JJ with his caretaker. That's when she lets herself accept the compliment. Maybe she does deserve a moment of recognition for fighting relentlessly when she could have dismissed a vague suspicion. She gives a short speech, thanking the children for their bravery and promising them she'll never stop listening. After the ceremony, JJ rushes up, newly confident. "Officer Barnes," he says with a shy grin, "thank you for what you said in there. I feel like I have a future now." She smiles, ruffling his hair gently. "You do. You absolutely do." He looks over at Carla, who stands by Simone, chatting animatedly. "We all do, I guess." His voice drifts off, and then he adds, "But I still miss Ava. I hope we find her." Riley nods, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We're going to do our best." That's a promise. As the weeks blend into months, investigations expand, and several arrests are made in connection with Gail's network. Some children are located, reuniting with extended family or placed in safer environments. Others remain missing, a grim reminder that one conviction doesn't undo all harm. Through it all, Riley remains resolute, forging partnerships with agencies across state lines. She liaises with specialized task forces focusing on missing children, using her unique perspective as both a cop and a former foster kid to advocate for systemic changes in how potential adopters and foster caregivers are screened. One late afternoon, she gets a surprise visit at the station. A woman in a business suit introduces herself as an attorney representing a nationwide nonprofit dedicated to preventing child trafficking. They've heard about Riley's role in bringing down Gail Thompson, and they want her expertise in shaping legislation that demands stricter oversight of foster facilities. Riley feels a surge of pride and humility, recognizing this could be a chance to help kids on a broader scale. She isn't sure she's cut out for politics or policy, but she can't deny the opportunity to turn her experiences into impactful change. While pondering that new avenue, she still works her day-to-day patrols, responding to everything from traffic incidents to domestic disputes. Sometimes, she'll pass a group home or foster center during a routine patrol and experience a moment of flashback, the hushed fear in JJ's voice, the terror in Carla's eyes, the quiet resignation in her own younger self. She'll remind herself that vigilance is key, that behind any cheerful facade could lurk secrets. But she also thinks about the many honest, caring foster parents who truly make a difference. She doesn't want to paint the entire system with the same brush. She just wants the system to be better. When the day of the sentencing arrives for Gail's accomplices, two staff members who helped orchestrate the nightly handoffs, Riley attends the hearing. JJ is there too, flanked by a supportive social worker and a case manager. The sentence is harsh, reflecting the judge's condemnation of how they betrayed children entrusted to their care. JJ exhales a shaky breath when the gavel strikes. Riley puts an arm around him, guiding him out of the courtroom. He glances up at her. Does this mean it's finally over? She struggles to give a perfect answer. It means their part in it is over. But we keep going until every kid is safe. Understand? He nods, though sorrow clouds his eyes. I wish Ava were here to see this. Riley can only nod. She drives him back to the group home where he's temporarily staying. It's a far better environment, with a dedicated staff that treats the kids kindly. As JJ heads inside, he spins around and waves. Riley waves back, hoping with every fiber of her being that one day she can tell him Ava was found alive and well. The city eventually moves on, as cities do. News cycles shift to other scandals, and the Thompson home fades from the front pages. But the official closure of the place stands as a reminder to be more vigilant about those we entrust with the care of children. Simone Delaney, for her part, keeps working diligently, adopting stricter measures for all foster homes under her supervision. She confides in Riley that she sometimes lies awake at night, replaying the times she visited Gail's place and missed the signs. Riley tells her that the important thing is they caught it now, and that hopefully future kids will be spared because of the new protocols. Seasons change, and the Fosters who were rescued from the Thompson home settle into new routines. Carla thrives in a nurturing home, making new friends at her high school, even joining the debate club. JJ remains in a stable group home until a permanent placement is found. He excels at writing, channeling his past trauma into short stories and poems. Riley reads one of them during a social workers get-together. It's about a boy who sees monsters beneath the floorboards of his house, only to realize they're actually men dressed in suits, trading secrets. She finds it chilling and honest, and it renews her resolve to keep pushing for justice. One day, Riley visits a detective's office across town. The detective stands up to greet her, a grim expression on his face. "We might have a lead on Ava," he says, showing her an image captured from a convenience store's security camera in a neighboring state. The girl in the photo looks like Ava might look a few months older, thinner, with a haunted look in her eyes. The detective warns it's not conclusive, but it's something. Riley knows that if Ava is out there, time is of the essence. She sets in motion a plan to coordinate with local authorities in that state, hoping that soon they can verify if it's really Ava. She calls Simone to inform her of the update, and Simone nearly breaks down in tears of relief that there might be a chance to save one more child. As Riley drives away, her phone buzzes with messages from various sources. She has half a dozen leads to chase about other kids rumored to be missing from different group homes. The entire infiltration Gale orchestrated might just be one branch of a larger network. It feels daunting, an endless game of whack-a-mole with people who profit off innocent lives. But she won't stop. She can't. Every name on JJ's list, every child who went missing, is now a personal mission. Even if she can't bring them all home, she'll try. That night, she slips into bed exhausted, physically and emotionally. She stares at the ceiling, pondering the road ahead. Justice was served in Gale's case. The Thompson home no longer operates. Yet the deeper problem remains. Unscrupulous individuals can exploit even the best-intentioned systems for dark purposes. It's a lot for one officer to shoulder. She thinks about the congratulatory ceremony where everyone hailed her as a hero. She wonders if heroism is really just refusing to close your eyes when you see a child mouth "help us." When the phone rings at dawn, she rolls over groggily. Another lead, another potential rescue. She flips on the bedside lamp and grabs a notepad. The voice on the other end is a local official in the neighboring state who might have located the convenience store clerk that saw the girl who looked like Ava. The clerk recalls she left with a man in a beat-up sedan heading east. That's not much to go on, but it's a direction. Riley thanks them, scribbles notes, and tells them she'll drive out there as soon as she can. She pictures the day she might stand face-to-face with Ava, free from the nightmares of the Thompson home. She imagines telling JJ that his friend is safe. That hope fuels her through every minute of the bureaucratic process. Though the main thrust of the Thompson home story concludes with Gale behind bars, it ushers in a new chapter in Riley's life. She evolves from a patrol officer with a personal chip on her shoulder about the foster system to an advocate at the intersection of law enforcement and child protection. She collaborates with Simone, Carla, JJ, and a host of other allies who believe in shining a light on the darkest corners of child welfare. The system is far from perfect, and each new day brings fresh challenges, but they tackle them head-on. Sometimes, progress is slow. A new piece of legislation here, a public awareness campaign there. Yet each small victory, each moment when a missing child is recovered, or a shady transaction is exposed, feels like a triumph worth celebrating. Riley learns to measure success not in how many accolades she receives, but in how many kids get to wake up in safe homes. In the hush of an early evening, a week after the final convictions of the Thompson home staff, she visits JJ one last time before he relocates to a permanent placement. He's sitting on the porch of the group home, watching the sun dip behind the houses across the street. She takes a seat beside him, the two of them silent for a long moment. "They say I might get adopted soon," he says eventually. "I'm a teenager, though, so it's not that easy. But the family seemed cool. He tries to sound casual, but she can sense the hope in his voice. "I'm happy for you," Riley replies, genuinely meaning it. She knows teenage adoption can be tough. If he found a family who's ready to support him, that's a gift. She looks at him. "You deserve it." He turns to her. "What if something goes wrong again? What if people are just as bad as Gail, but they just hide it differently?" Riley's chest tightens. "Then you do what you did before, you speak up. And this time, there'll be people to listen. Me, Simone Carlos. We've got your back. You're not alone." He offers a timid smile. The hush between them is comfortable now, as if they both understand a chapter of their lives is closing and a new one is beginning. For him, it's a shot at a real family. For her, it's a vow to keep unraveling these networks until no child has to whisper, "Help us," to a passing officer in the dead of night. When she stands to leave, JJ surprises her with a quick hug. "Thank you," he murmurs. "For everything." She pats his shoulder, fighting off the swell of emotion. "Just take care of yourself, okay?" He nods, and she walks to her car, the sky turning from orange to deep purple overhead. In her mind, she replays the day she first stepped into the Thompson home with that routine call. How naive it seemed to expect nothing beyond a mild scolding for noisy kids. Now she knows better. Evil can hide in the very places we're taught to trust. But so can courage. And that's what keeps her going, knowing that even one small voice, one timid request for help, can bring down a mountain of corruption if given the chance to speak. She drives off, determined to follow every clue about Ava or any other missing child. The engine's hum and the city lights become a backdrop to her thoughts, a tangible reminder that life marches on and that duty never ends. Still, she carries a sense of solace in her chest, a belief that good people, guided by compassion, can and will make a difference, even if it's one child at a time. She passes by the abandoned shell of the Thompson home on her route, now locked up and draped with warning signs. It's an eerie testament to how illusions can shatter once the truth is laid bare. She catches sight of her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her gaze is resolute, carrying the weight of all the broken illusions, but also the unbreakable promise she's made to protect children who have no one else to count on. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already and subscribe for more.